Sean O'Connell, ESPN 700. As someone correctly stated, it seems like a team in a rebuild, and some things were done this past season to potentially manipulate where the team would end up in the draft lottery odds. And unfortunately, some of that is dependent on luck, and the team got a little bit unlucky. So do you have a philosophy? What is your philosophy on, for lack of a better term, to be indelicate, tanking or manipulating minutes and player performance in order to achieve better lottery odds? We won't see that this year.
Yes, we will. But before we get into the tanking, what is that reporter so afraid of? For lack of a better term, to be indelicate, and then he finally says tanking. The Jazz know that they've been tanking. You can go ahead and say it. They're actually doing it. All you're doing is asking a question using the word tanking. And so, again, there we have Austin Ainge at his introductory press conference where he is named the president of basketball operations for the Jazz, and he states that you will not see tanking this year, and really admitting that there had been tanking in the past. But we are seeing tanking this year. And I wasn't certain because I'm not closely following the Jazz. So I wanted to look, and I went straight to the Utah Jazz subreddit because maybe Lauri Markkanen is just coming down with mystery illnesses before games. So I wanted to make sure that this was actually the case. And here we see in the subreddit, second comment, let's be honest with ourselves. The Jazz are tanking again this year, 53 upvotes. And I think, and when you look at, by the way, there's a poll where Utah Jazz fans state that they want the Jazz to tank this year because what happens is if the Jazz finish in ninth, if they get the ninth draft pick or higher, then it goes to the OKC Thunder. And so if they tank and they get a lower pick, then they get to keep the pick. So obviously there's an incentive there. And I'm not really faulting the Jazz in this video. I think one thing I want to point out is that building a winning franchise in the NBA is more luck than the NBA front offices would like to admit. There's so much luck, and we see this because the GMs, the front office executives, they can't help themselves. What do? They go right back to the lottery fortune, right? When they want to turn their franchise around, where do they look to? They look to losing because losing leads them to the lottery, and that's where they need to really turn their team around. It's not going to be through intense player development. It's not going to be through developing a coaching staff. It's not going to be through advanced scouting. It's going to be through losing a lot and then winning a franchise player and then changing everything around to where the team looks good again. You've seen this very recently with the Spurs. And getting Victor Wembanyama, who was the prize of all prizes, was not enough. We saw the Spurs go back to the lottery again and again. And so now they have Stephon Castle. Now they have Dylan Harper. And now you get the praise that goes along with the Spurs now turning around their roster. Now Brian Wright looks like a top-level executive. Okay, well, where is he at if he doesn't get Victor Wembanyama? Because when you land these prizes, other good things start to happen, like De'Aaron Fox wants to join your team, and so your team grows stronger because again we've got this immediate luck that strikes the franchise and it changes everything around, and then you start to have that pool, and then now the Spurs are a contender. The Jazz are not a contender, and let's go back to the introductory press conference because Austin Ainge, son of Danny Ainge, makes a few comments about his approach that I found interesting. So let's go to 3 minutes, 30 seconds in.
Kind of how do you approach that on how they've done things in the past and versus how you want to do things in the future?
Well, I'm learning a little bit how they did things in the past, but and I'll just try to add what I can. But it's really, there's a lot of ways you can execute it, but mostly it's just making a lot of good decisions over and over and over. Right? Two ways: second round picks, first round picks, trades, free agency. It's just making good decisions, stacking up good players so you have more to work with. That's really the job. And so whether you're in the middle, the beginning, or the end of building a team, that's what you're doing every day, trying to make good decisions. And so that's what we'll try to do.
Okay, that sounds good. And he continues on this line of thinking when answering another question. So let's go ahead and play one more clip. And this is about 5 minutes and 28 seconds.
In KSL Sports, do you have, Austin, like an approach to how to build teams in the NBA of what you think is winning right now, where the league is headed, and how attainable that is?
Well, I can't tell you all the secrets.
He doesn't have any secrets. His secret is losing on purpose and then hoping he gets a good lottery pick.
No, I mean, I really believe that it is kind of a boring answer, but I really believe it's just stacking good decisions, one on top of the other. And, a lot of times people see the big trade or the, big move, that big free agent signing or something as the end, but really that requires lots of...
He forgot to add the big draft pick. He worked around that, the big trade, the free agency signing. We know with the Jazz, it is not those. It is the lottery pick that you are after. It's the big draft pick.
diligent management to build up to that point, right? And so it's just about stacking good decisions together, and that's what we're going to try to do.
So to summarize, losing over and over again, sitting your franchise player, and then trying to get a really good position in this year's draft. And the same as last year and the year before, and however long the Jazz have been tanking. And again, this is not to single out the Jazz, but they are top of mind because the Jazz played the Spurs tonight, and we had Lauri Markkanen out with an illness. Lauri Markkanen has been out a lot this year, and we can see here from his stats that he is putting up superstar numbers. So we see 27.9 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 2.2 assists, 48.3% shooting from the field, or 48.3% shooting from the field, and then he's shooting 36.5% from three. He's making 88.4% of his free throws, and he's got a steal per game, and he's only averaging 1.6 turnovers per game, but he's only logged 33 games to date, and that is because the Jazz are holding him back. And so by doing so, I mean, Lauri Markkanen is so good. He's got so much pull that he's making the Jazz too good, like so good that they could potentially make the playoffs. And that isn't the direction that the Jazz want to go, nor their fans. And I don't know if I've already mentioned this, but there's a poll where the Jazz fans overwhelmingly state that they want to tank again. But going back to what Austin Ainge was saying about stacking good decisions over and over again, one thing you have to do is think about whether or not what you think is a good decision is actually a good decision. So what's really harmful to the franchise and then also for the fan base is to try to lose over and over again. When you're doing that, you're going against the natural tendency, and you are creating a fundamental conflict within your organization because you're supposed to be geared towards winning, and that is the outward appearance. But underlying that, everyone in the building is aware that you don't really want to win. And when you have a team, especially a younger team with some pieces, when we think of younger, especially with Keontae George has been playing really well. Of course, Lauri Markkanen has been playing really well. But the problem is that when you as a franchise don't want to play well and you really don't want to win, you are sending the exact opposite message of what you should be. And you're continually delaying moving forward because you're trying to get this one lottery pick that's going to change everything. And so with Lauri Markkanen too, he's right now, he is in the prime of his career. So he's 28 years old. He will never be better than these years that he's about to string together. And he's watching these waste away. I don't know, obviously we don't know how Lauri Markkanen feels about this, but he's being paid really well. But the best years of his career are leaving. They'll be over soon. And then that's it, right? That your career goes by really fast. And so that's what's going to happen to Lauri Markkanen. And right now, his best years are being wasted. And he's built to this point. When he started off with the Bulls, he wasn't this same superstar player. He was a player with upside, but he wasn't looked at the same. Now he's developed into this very top tier player. And the prime of his career is being wasted. And it's going to continue to be wasted because the Jazz are constantly stuck in, let's say, quote unquote, rebuild mode. Of course, rebuild has become code for tanking. And that is exactly what the Jazz are doing. And if we go to the comments in this on this introductory video, there's a few of the comments here that are telling. And let's see. One is lifelong Jazz fan here. For the past 40 years, I've been passionate about the team my whole life until the last year or two. Ever since Smith got involved, so Ryan Smith is the Jazz owner, everything has gotten worse. Roster, coach, management, jerseys, culture, and most importantly, our win-loss record. Unfortunately, our franchise has become unrecognizable. So in the 90s, very early 2000s, but especially in the 90s, the Jazz were a force. No, they never won the championship, but this was a team that was the model of winning and consistency. They won. They were a very difficult opponent. They were disciplined. They were well coached by Jerry Sloan. This team was so good, and their fan base was excellent. They were difficult to play. And of course, we know that they got very close to the championship. They never won the championship, but they were the model franchise for, hey, we're looking for consistency and we're looking for winning. They checked both of those boxes. And now, as the comments are getting at, this franchise is no longer recognizable to that early model of consistency. So continuing on with this comment, unfortunately, our franchise has become unrecognizable. Even after we lost Stockton and Malone, we at least still competed and always tried to win. never thought I'd live to see the day where the Jazz gave up on entirely on a season. And for what? I understand what Smith is trying to do, but he's losing the fan base in the process. When exactly are we supposed to get good again? That is the exact right question. Okay, we understand you're trying to tank, but when is this over? Like, when are you actually going to go, you know what? It's time to start winning. And when you repress that and when you hold that back, you're causing irreparable damage that you're just never going to get those years back. And we're watching just years pass by for the Jazz franchise. And eventually people just lose interest because if you're a part of the fan base and you're just watching this team who is not trying to win, they're working against themselves, they're undermining their own chances of success. What are you really watching for at this point? You're just watching the different players and seeing how they interact with one another, maybe watching the young prospects, see who's up and coming, but the team, like the momentum, it's not there. And so that's when I say are you actually making a good decision? Think about it in terms of not just, hey, we're tanking so that we can lose, so that we can get lucky and we can win a player that's hopefully a franchise player, but also think about what you're doing more broadly and what effect that is having. That's exactly what this comment is getting at. So the comment continues. Smith has been at the helm for 5 years, and it's been a nosedive the whole time. 5 years is a long time, and even if you get a superstar player in the draft, what does it mean? Like, is the team really going to be so much better off? Like, when is the championship on the horizon? And if you keep deferring and you keep deferring, eventually you're just mired in losses and just being a losing team. And that's what the Jazz are right now. They're a losing team. They've been a losing team. And this is for the Jazz fans. The Jazz fans Utah has such good fans. And for these fans, I'm sure, especially the older ones, they are not accustomed to this whatsoever. And so watching the team continually defer winning has to be difficult, especially now when you have enough to start piecing together and start leveling up. You could build around Lauri Markkanen, or at least you could. Now it's not going to make as much sense because Lauri Markkanen's maybe got 2 prime years left. Let's say 2, maybe 3 if we're going to stretch it, but probably 2 prime years left. They're not, because they haven't built around him so far, because they haven't tried to move forward. They were just wasting Lauri Markkanen. So they have this asset. They're not trading him. They'll probably trade him at some point, but they're just not building towards anything. And so you've got a real problem here. And looking at the Jazz's schedule, one thing I noted as it was happening, I thought to myself, hey, the Jazz they have some legitimacy this year. Like, we could see them actually try to make the playoffs. They beat the Spurs and the Pistons in back-to-back games, and they beat the Spurs in San Antonio. This is especially significant because at least now, I think the Pistons and the Spurs are 2 of the top 3 teams, maybe 2 of the top 4. But this is the best of the best in the NBA, and the Jazz were able to beat them in back-to-back games. So that tells you the Jazz are a competitive team. They could very easily be a playoff team, and it's not going to happen because they're so focused on going back to the lottery. They need to get lucky. And so when it comes to stacking good decisions over and over again, let's not pretend that you are more advanced or more fancy than you are. You are looking to lose basketball games, undermine your fan base, undermine the current basketball team so that you can hopefully get lucky with a draft pick and win. And by no means is this limited to the Jazz. We have seen teams abusing the lottery throughout the years. So the Jazz are right now, they're current. We've seen there's more talk about it. That's what's prompted this video. But I think more broadly, I have a problem with the fact that the NBA is not addressing this to the point where they're deterring it. The behavior is still happening, even though the percentage chances of landing the top pick is lower. You're still incentivized to lose games, and we need to take that the other way. And I think one easy way to do this that will not happen, but is if we take away the guarantees. So if you have to meet a certain threshold of wins before you're guaranteed all of your money. So really making players and teams incentivized to win. So when players' money is on the line, you see their behavior change. And so I think that's what the NBA needs to bring more. They need to bring about more incentivization. Did I say that right? They need to incentivize the players and the teams to win more games, to try to win games. Because right now there's no incentive. The incentive is to play in the regular season to the degree necessary, but also not try to go too far out and reserve for the playoffs. And we need to see more competitiveness in the regular season. And so I think you can take care of multiple things at once if you start to align the incentives with playing games and winning games. That's what we need to see. And right now, there are so many teams that don't really care or not if they win. And in fact, they might win early on. They might go ahead and gauge how the season's going. And then if it's going too well, right, then they're going to go south. So the NBA needs to work on this, and it will make the league a better league if we see more teams trying to win. That's what it should be every night. It should be a battle to try to win. But too often we see teams really just folding up before they even get competitive, and that's because they're reserving for future years. And then sometimes during the season, they're waiting on the playoffs. So we see too much deferment. We need to see the now. We need to see teams competing now and trying to establish themselves and win now. So let's go ahead and go through some tabs, make sure I've covered everything. Here we have the Utah Jazz at 14 and 29. So they are sinking right to the bottom of the standings. So we see there are 3 teams with 10 wins. There are 2 teams with 12 wins. And then we have the Jazz. So the Jazz are now right at the bottom. And again, they don't have to be. This is a team with Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George. They've got enough. And especially when we look back at their trades that they made last season and previously, they could be leveling up to the point where they're not a contender, but they are definitely a very competitive team. It's a very competitive team and very much in the playoff mix. But as it is now, they're looking for another draft pick. Last draft, they got Ace Bailey, so they're returning again to try to get lucky. So not really stacking good decisions, just stacking losses. Again, trust the process, try to lose as much as possible, and then get that draft pick. And it's not only the Jazz, and the NBA needs to step up. And so again, the pressure on Adam Silver. And when you look at so many interleague issues with the NBA, it keeps coming back to Adam Silver, which raises the question, or really points to the exit for Adam Silver. That's what this points to, is like, you're doing a poor job with this very, very valuable sports league where we could see so many changes made that enhance the league, enhance the product. But, somewhat ironically, it comes back to a lack of a lack of incentive on the part of the NBA commissioner, because they've already got the media money, so they're set. So there's really nothing to push them to try to get better, because they're already the number one sports league, right? For basketball, they're the primary sports league. They've got the money. What's making them try to get better? What's making them take a risk to shake things up and try to make sure that tanking is not a good option. It's not an appealing option. And that's what we need to see. We need to see to where teams don't want to tank because it'd be illogical for them to do so. And so with the Jazz, going back to the Jazz, we're seeing it now. It's open and apparent. Last season or the season before, Adam Silver keeps threatening that there's going to be something that happens. The Jazz took the fine. They keep on. And here we are back again to tanking. And what's to stop the Jazz from doing this again? Let's say they don't get the player they want in this year's draft, and they go ahead and they decide to go ahead and stack good decisions over and over again. And so they're stacking losses again. So I think one takeaway from the video, a lot more luck in building a winning franchise. Look at the Spurs, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, and then we see Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, not luck. That was the Spurs excelling right there. But Victor Wembanyama, same repeat, right? And then you have a model franchise. And again, when it comes to getting these players, they have a magnetic pull. When you have a player with the gravity of Victor Wembanyama, then good things start to happen to your franchise, and then your decisions start to look better and better. Your acquisitions look better because now they're playing with Victor Wembanyama, et cetera. We saw the same thing with Tim Duncan. So when you get lucky, when you have these high draft picks that turn out to be franchise players, everything turns out well. But I think the NBA needs to look to resolve this, right? It's happening too much. It's very apparent and obvious, and we're seeing during the season games not count, teams aren't showing up, they don't want to win, and I think that is something that looms large. When you have teams that don't want to win, that's a real problem, and that goes right along with players that don't really want to play. They'd rather sit on the sidelines and look at their phones and just hang out rather than actually playing in the game. So we need players to also want to play in the games, and we need front offices to be pushing to win rather than pushing to lose, so that they can hopefully land a star and then look better after they have that star. The NBA needs to work on this, and I think one of the ways that you do this is you just align the incentives so that teams are incentivized to win and not to lose. So I think that's where everything starts. With the Jazz, though, the attention is all on them. The focus is on them. And when we look at Austin Ainge, He's already gone back, and and the Utah Jazz are tanking again.